Hilltop Consultants. Real IT people, real IT solutions, real IT partners. Hello and welcome to the Hilltop Consultants webinar series. I'm your host, Clayton Romero. In today's episode, we'll be going over some of the common and new technologies that are available in the marketplace, reviewing the shift from perpetual or volume licensing software to subscription-based solutions, and taking a look at some of the more important security topics that law firms need to be aware of. By the end of this episode, you should be equipped with the knowledge you need to make informed decisions and ask the right questions when exploring your options in the marketplace. Let's go over some of the common hardware technologies that you should be familiar with. SSDs. Every couple of years, a technology comes along that changes the industry. Solid-state hard drives, or SSDs, has been that technology. These are a more fault-tolerant and energy-efficient replacement for the traditional spinning platter drives. With solid-state technology, manufacturers are able to make thinner and lighter laptops that use less energy, resulting in longer battery lives. In addition, computers equipped with SSDs are significantly faster to respond to users' commands, thus dramatically improving the user's experience. Servers. A server is a very powerful and versatile computer that is required for certain software or security functions. Servers can be hosted in a data center or installed in a local office infrastructure and support both local and remote workforces. WAP, wireless access points, or WAPs, broadcast a wireless network signal and make wireless access to firm resources and transmission of data possible. Within the last year, Wave 2 wireless technology has hit the market and replaces Wave 1 technology. Wave 2 brings with it both security and performance benefits. For example, with a Wave 1 WAP, only one device can communicate at a time, and every other device has to wait its turn until the first device has received its data. Wave 2 can have up to 4 communications at the same time. This is called multi-MIMO. Switches. Imagine for a second that all of your data traveling around your network is cars. Your switches are the highways on which those cars travel from place to place. As with roads and highways you drive on, the older the switch, the worse it performs. With today's program needs and bandwidth requirements, you want to make sure your switches are gigabit, and whenever possible, that your phones and computers run on separate switches. Firewalls. Going back to the data as cars analogy, your firewall is the police force and traffic authority. It keeps your network safe and flowing efficiently. It also enables more advanced data handling to get the most out of your internet while keeping you secure. Modem. Modems have come a long way since early 2000s. You won't hear that dial-up screech coming out of any today's modern modems. They still serve the same purpose now as they did then, and that is to function as your gateway to the internet. Thin client. This technology is making a comeback as cloud hosting environments become more prevalent and affordable. It is a small device with extremely limited local functionality that facilitates accessing cloud desktop resources like Citrix or VMware VDI environments. Docking station. In a way, this is the opposite of a thin client. With laptops getting smaller and thinner, they have fewer and fewer ports available to connect things like network cables, monitors, or printers to. A docking station enables users to plug in a single cable or click in their laptop to easily and dramatically expand their machine's functions. Now, a mobile employee, or an employee who works part of the time from home, can sit down at their desk and make use of multiple monitors, bigger, more comfortable keyboards or mice, and other peripherals without messing with a bunch of cables every day. Now let's take a look at some software terminology as it relates to things you're likely to encounter in a law firm. Data. This is literally any and all information. According to the American Bar Association's updated technology handbook, it is a firm's ethical responsibility to protect a client's data on firm equipment. That could be anything from the client's contact numbers to their actual contracts or legal records. It's important that the legal manager know how and where data is stored, which leads us to data governance. It is easier to store and access data in more places than it has ever been. It seems every service, free or otherwise, is offering some kind of free storage to the cloud. Firm or client data can be stored in many different places: hosted locally, hosted off-site, managed by a service, stored in the cloud, or any combination thereof. The industry is leaning towards need-to-know security to help mitigate this spread. As a firm, it is crucial that everyone knows where they are allowed to store data. Operating system, OS. An operating system is the software that acts as an interface between the computer hardware and the user. Some common examples of this are Mac OS and Windows 10, but mobile devices have their own OSs as well. iOS and Android are two examples of mobile operating systems. Software application, app. Applications, or apps, typically refer to software running on top of the OS. This provides additional functionality to the user and includes productivity apps, web browsers, timekeeping software, and so on. Software as a service, SaaS. The industry as a whole has moved toward the licensing model where software is subscribed to with a per-license cost and a set term. Some examples you might be familiar with are iManage Cloud, Office 365, NetDocuments, Clio, Epic, or Adobe Creative Cloud. SaaS solutions ensure you always have the latest features available to you and the right to use the software as long as you pay for your subscription, with the added benefit of not having to have a huge dollar amount up front. Perpetual. Though it is harder to come by, perpetual licensing model allows you to purchase a permanent copy of the software and usually does not entitle you to updates or upgrades to the software suite. Some of these programs also live and die with the PC, which means if you want to install it on another machine, you need to purchase another copy. Commitment. With any of these agreements, there are often different prices based on their commitment terms. For example, you may have an annual commitment with monthly payment, or you may have a 3-year commitment with an annual payment. Before you sign up for services, make sure you explore all the options, as it can save you money and prevent unexpected costs from catching you off guard. Maintenance or support agreements. Enterprise or specialty software companies sometimes offer maintenance or support agreements, which grants the use of technical support or software updates to their software. Some software vendors make these mandatory and can force you to pay back support agreements when it comes time to upgrade or update your version. As with hardware and software, telecoms has a lot of terms that you need to be familiar with, so let's cover those now. Internet Service Provider, ISP. As the name suggests, this is any company that brings the internet to your building or sells you bandwidth. AT&T, Cogent, and Windstream are a few examples. In addition to providing bandwidth to their clients, they also maintain the lines and equipment responsible for stable communication between one endpoint and another across the internet. Secondary, failover, or backup ISP. It is always in a company's best interest to have a secondary, failover, or backup ISP. Essentially, this means you have 2 or more ISPs and can still access the internet if one line goes down. It is important to make sure your secondary ISP is not the same kind of connection. So you wouldn't want 2 cable providers or 2 fiber providers. A common practice is to have a cellular or wireless backup that can function even if someone cut the lines doing construction. In order to make effective use of a backup or secondary ISP, you need a firewall capable of multi-WAN or is failover aware. SD-WAN. SD-WANs are a technology that used to be practical only for very, very large organizations because they were very expensive. But in the last year or two, they have become inexpensive enough to be practical for even small businesses to utilize. An SD-WAN is sometimes referred to as an internet concentrator and combines 2 or more ISPs' bandwidth, allowing you to take advantage of both. This also allows for more seamless failover, resulting in practically invisible handoffs when one ISP fails. Though some SD-WAN devices include a firewall, they do not take the place of a dedicated, purpose-built security appliance. Service Level Agreements, SLAs. This is an agreement between a service company and a subscriber, which details the standards, expectations, and responsibilities of both the service provider and the subscriber. This applies to ISPs, cloud providers, managed services companies, and SaaS providers. It also will detail exactly what kind of service you are entitled to and what recourse is available to you should your provider fail to meet their SLAs. Now that we've detailed some of the terms and best practices you might encounter with an ISP, let's take a closer look at what ISPs are providing. Bandwidth. This is typically described in megabits per second, capital M, lowercase bps, or gigabits per second, capital G, lowercase bps. This term describes the rate at which you can move data to and from the internet. There's lots of other terms that your bandwidth might be described with. For example, shared, in which case the amount of bandwidth listed on your ISP's offering is the maximum you could see, but the total bandwidth is shared among many other companies, sometimes an entire building. Generally speaking, cable internet is shared, whereas fiber is not, with the notable exception of shared fiber. Symmetrical and asymmetrical. With symmetrical bandwidth, you can upload data as fast as you can download data, whereas asymmetrical bandwidth means you will have a larger download speed and a smaller upload speed. Especially as more and more services move into the cloud, the upload speed is something that firms need to pay special attention to. Always remember to ask your trusted IT provider for their recommendations as you explore cloud options or look at new ISPs. Dedicated. If a bandwidth is referred to as dedicated, then this is the minimum amount of guaranteed bandwidth you are entitled to. What is the cloud? If you pardon the pun, it's a pretty nebulous term. The cloud means lots of things to lots of different people. If you hear people using words like hybrid, hosted, or distributed to describe the services, then they are probably talking about some kind of cloud solution. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, classifies cloud computing as a model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management effort or service provider interaction. Super clear, right? There's a common misconception about that statement. People often assume that when they move into the cloud, that it'll become simpler or easier to manage. The reality is that it complicates the environment by an order of magnitude. That said, the benefits of cloud solutions, when well implemented by a well-informed IT provider, outweigh the risks brought by the added complexity. Let's dig into some of what those cloud services look like, the benefits they bring, and some of the important considerations that come along with them. Hosted desktop. Desktop as a service, or DaaS, utilizes hosted data centers to provide end users with a virtual machine in the cloud. With Citrix or VMware, users can connect to their cloud desktop from anywhere in the world with relatively little bandwidth and always get the same environment. An attorney on a hosted desktop could, for example, work on a document, shut down their local machine, and go to a deposition, and come right back to where they left off. The user never has to worry about breaking or losing their laptop and losing large amounts of data. Infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, is for servers what hosted desktops is for user workstations. For a monthly fee, a hosting provider will give a company use of their compute in the cloud. These servers can have storage space, processing power, or memory added to them very quickly and cheaply without the need to disassemble a server and physically install more hardware. Your servers are always running on the latest and greatest server equipment and in an environment which is supported by huge enterprise-level power protection and bandwidth. This service greatly reduces the need for an on-premise server. SaaS reduces the need to own and maintain local servers. For a fee, service providers host and maintain the servers and enterprise-level software so that their subscribers can use the software and services without paying for expensive equipment to support the firm's data, sophisticated software, or databases. In addition, the subscriber gets to take advantage of enterprise-level security without having $1 million security budget. There are some important considerations you should be on the lookout for when reviewing the contract for any cloud services. Know who owns the data hosted by the provider and make sure that the details are in the contract you're signing. It is important to know where the data lives and if there is any geo-redundancy. Does your data live in more than one place? It is important to know what your client's requirements are, as some may require data remains in the US or be maintained by only US citizens. Does the hosting include backups? It is typical for cloud solutions to protect subscribers' data from data loss as a result of hardware failure, but rarely include protection against intentional or accidental deletion of data. Ensure both of these details are in your contract and that you understand the terms. The last thing you want is to find out you're not backed up when you always thought you were. What are your rights of termination? As with any contract, it is important to understand the terms and the circumstances in which cancellation is allowed. Also be sure you understand the penalties for canceling early. In the event that you cancel your agreement with your cloud service provider, it's important to understand your rights and responsibilities to access and retrieve your data. Does the responsibility rest with you or with the provider to put that data back in your hands? What condition will that data be in? How long do they store a copy of your data, if at all? Do you need to provide a hard drive or location to download the data to? How long do you have to retrieve your data? These are just some questions to get you started. By no means is that a complete list. Look out for this language in your contract as well. Security measures. As I touched on briefly a minute ago, different clients, industries, and providers all have different security priorities and requirements. Understand the controls in place required to access your data and under what conditions. Additionally, understand what your responsibilities are in order to comply with those security measures. Finally, SLAs. More important than your SLA with your ISP is the SLA with your service provider hosting your data. Make sure you understand how much downtime is acceptable and what kind of notice they are obligated to give you about maintenance windows. Security is paramount. Hacker collectives, dark web, internal and external bad actors, free unsecured Wi-Fi and computing environments everywhere. Never before has our data been more at risk every hour of every day. Part of that is because it's all over the place. It's hard to guard a fence that's 10 miles long with just one person. And part of that is because data is so valuable. It is literally a billion-dollar industry. In the United States, a breach in a company working in the services industry costs, on average, $11 million, with each record compromised in this way costing $233. Consider that a typical small law firm that has been in business for 10 years will have over 1 million records of client data or work product. The images here come from the cost of breach calculator developed by IBM together with the Ponemon Institute. We've included a link in the description below if you want to run the calculations for your own company. So, how can you protect yourself if and when you experience a breach? Data governance and mobility. Two of the easiest and most important solutions are MDM and MFA. Mobile Device Management, MDM, is a tool that allows you to easily manage firm data on a device. It allows you to push information to that device, making it easy to set up email, Wi-Fi access, and any company-wide apps you use. It also allows you to remove that information and prevent it from being stored on the device's backup. So if you have an employee who leaves, they wouldn't be able to restore all of that valuable client data to the device once you've removed it. Our phones and laptops are very personal things. We keep all of our most guarded information on them. Credit cards, passwords, family photos. If one of those devices is lost or stolen, MDM gives employees the peace of mind that you can erase the device so that nothing untoward happens to their data. Multi-factor authentication used to be something that only very large organizations used to access remote or very secure systems, but now it's nearly ubiquitous. Anytime you sign up for an account and you're asked for your password, then another piece of security information, that's multi-factor, sometimes called dual-factor or two-factor. The best kinds of MFA are the ones that involve randomly generated numbers, delivered via something like RSA or Duo. This type of multi-factor doesn't require a user to remember another complex password and can't be guessed or found written on a slip of paper kept underneath a keyboard. Not that any of us have ever been guilty of writing our passwords down and keeping them on our desk, right? The next thing that's imperative to do is have a documented security policy. Most cyber insurance will require you to have a documented security policy, and clients are more and more frequently exercising their right to audit firms to confirm their data is being well cared for. Remember, in breaches, it's not if, it's when. So make sure your policy includes an incident response plan. It has been shown that an incident response plan can reduce the cost of a security event by as much as $14 per record. And when you've got potentially millions of documents, that can have a huge impact. Make sure your incident response plan includes what to do in the event of a breach, as well as what to do if you suspect a breach, who to go to, and how to get help. In your security policy, include a technology use section. Employees should know when it's appropriate to use firm computers for personal use, or how they're allowed to access firm data from personal devices. This policy should also detail what the employee's responsibility is to protect client data. You can have the largest security budget in the world, but it won't matter if your employees don't follow safe technology guidelines. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the daunting task of writing a security policy, reach out to your trusted IT advisor and ask them for help. Last year, the American Bar Association updated their cybersecurity policy as it relates to client data. Make sure you have the latest guide and that you're familiar with it. They split security into two main categories. There's physical security and there's technological security. Physical security should be overt and upfront as possible. This keeps staff safe and data behind physical barriers. Examples of physical security are access cards, reception acting as a gatekeeper, restricted rooms or cabinets that store servers or sensitive data, polarized light filters on computer screens, and alarms or cameras. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's a good start. Technological security is the opposite in many ways from physical security. The best technological security is the one that goes completely unnoticed. If you can't detect it, you can't subvert it. Some of these tools or best practices are implementing need-to-know security, using MDM and MFA to access firm or client data, quarterly security training, a business class firewall with a current security subscription. This can be expensive, but it is one of the most important pieces of technology to invest in. Intrusion detection software or appliances, and document classification and behavioral analysis software. As with the security policy, if you're feeling daunted by this list, reach out to your IT experts and ask them how they can help you implement some or all of these things. Let's spend a little time on cybersecurity terms in case I've mentioned something you weren't familiar with. Firewall. I've already talked a little bit about firewalls. They're the traffic authority on your network. Invest in a strong business class firewall that includes web filtering, data loss prevention or DLP scanning, encrypted packet inspection, because over 70% of malware comes in encrypted payloads, and supports MFA remote access. Access denial. This is a security method that prevents breaches by limiting what can be installed or connected to firm computers. This same method blocks access to any external media, thumb drives, DVD, portable hard drives, unless it is the specific type of encrypted drive. A penetration tester that I know says that he always has the best success breaching company security by putting a thumb drive with his intrusion software on it in an envelope labeled confidential, then dropping it in a hallway or bathroom. He says invariably someone picks it up and plugs it into their computer. Intrusion handling. Every employee of your company should know and understand what their role and responsibilities are when they know or suspect a breach is happening or has happened. This can be all the difference in preventing damage and/or client churn. Spam and email services. A robust solution will not only improve user efficiency by intelligently blocking or holding junk email, but it can also scan incoming emails for threats and handle them before they reach the user. Barracuda, Mimecast, and Proofpoint are strong examples. Phishing. We've all seen, or at least heard of these kinds of emails. What started as a Nigerian prince seeking asylum in the US and needing to move his boatloads of cash with your help has turned into someone familiar to you, with credible details asking for money or credentials. The evolution of this type of attack continues to make it more and more dangerous every day. The best defense is a good spam filter and user training. Hacking. Simply put, hacking is a very broad discipline which involves the subversion of security systems and the exploitation of computer glitches in order to gain access to systems or resources that would not otherwise be accessible. Viruses and malware. Programs that are intended to cause damage or gain access to a system are called viruses and malware. One of the most common and damaging types is called ransomware, which results in a blackmail or ransom demand to recover your data. Antivirus and anti-malware software. An enterprise antivirus solution, such as Bitdefender or ESET, should be mandatory on all company devices capable of handling firm or client data. Don't rely on the free software or trial software. Make sure you have a paid subscription to a strong antivirus solution. Regulatory organizations and clients are putting a lot of responsibility on law firms right now because of the risks and threats they face based on the businesses they do. In 2017, a Javelin study showed that personal data theft was responsible for $16.8 billion in damages. That is triple what it was the previous year. As of this recording, the 2018 numbers aren't out yet, but we're not likely to see that number go down. You may be thinking to yourself that your firm doesn't house any personal data on clients, any data worth stealing, or that you're just too small. But the reality is, small and medium-sized law firms are among the most at risk for breach, because they house so much data that can be used for credibility in future social engineering attacks. Add to that, most small and medium-sized law firms don't have the security budgets of the larger companies, so hackers can be confident that they won't have to spend as much time and energy breaching the security. The Electronic Communications Privacy Act classifies PPI, or private personal information, as social security numbers, driver's license numbers, state-issued ID cards, financial account numbers, and credit card numbers. ECPA requires all PPI to be protected by administrative, technological, and physical safeguards. These include encryption of all transmitted records and files containing PPI that will travel on public networks, encryption of all PPI being transmitted wirelessly, and encryption of all PPI stored on mobile devices. This is where that business-class firewall and MDM come in, as they can help enforce and facilitate that. Further, they require any company that has access to PPI meet the following requirements. You must use secure user authentication. That means complex passwords that expire regularly. 90 days is a good minimum. The company must use secure access controls. This goes back to the physical security, making sure no one who shouldn't have access to your data does. Reasonable monitoring to detect breaches. Reasonable up-to-date firewalls. This includes the security subscription, but also the age of the firewall. Reasonable up-to-date security software. Make sure your antivirus is up to date. And finally, education for all employees. 46 states have laws requiring notification concerning data breaches. These laws differ from state to state, but they're all in the same ballpark. If you have a breach, you're legally required to alert people potentially affected by that breach. Look up your state's laws, and if you have offices in multiple states, understand the details of all the laws affecting you and your business. If you need help understanding them or how to address them, please leverage your trusted IT advisors. While they aren't likely to be able to provide legal advice, they can help you navigate the landscape and provide plenty of practical advice. So, as we said earlier, it's not if, it's when. You find you've had a breach. Someone has deleted a ton of files. Someone got infected with ransomware. Now you're stuck. But it's okay because you have a disaster recovery and business continuity solution, right? It is important to note not all disaster recovery solutions are created equal. This is a calculator we use to help assess the risk and calculate the RTO, or return to operation value, that a business requires. In essence, it answers the question, how long can you afford to be down? The numbers shown here are based on a firm with 40 users, 2.5 terabytes of data, and a pretty average disaster recovery solution. This firm's ransomware event is going to cost them nearly $50,000 in lost productivity alone during the recovery. We've included the link to this calculator in the description so you can do the calculation for your own firm too. The right business continuity solution can provide RTO of a few hours or even a few minutes, and while they seem expensive up front, they can pay for themselves in a single event. Remember, it's not if, it's when. If you don't have a business continuity and disaster recovery solution, or you don't know what yours is capable of, ask your IT provider. Any BCDR should meet these requirements. You want to make sure all business-critical systems are protected. All backups should have off-site replication. Backups alone are not sufficient for a business. You need a solution that provides true business continuity. You need to know what is the acceptable level of lost data and lost revenue. Make sure your BCDR solution keeps at least 1 month of local retention. Make sure your solution receives a full test at least once a quarter. You never know your backups are good until you've done a full failure test. Just because there's a green check that says it performed a backup successfully doesn't mean a thing if the successful backup was a corrupted image. Finally, check what your legal requirements are based on the case or practice type. Some industries require 1-year retention. Some require 10 years. Others still might be under the effect of a non-spoliation letter and have to be kept indefinitely until a case is over. That concludes this episode of the Hilltop Consultants webinar series. We hope you found it informative, and after listening, you feel confident that you can ask the right questions when it comes to navigating the myriad components that you might be likely to encounter while trying to manage your firm's technology. I've been your host, Clayton Romero. Hilltop Consultants. Real IT people, real IT solutions, real IT partners.